Welcome to 28 Days and Beyond.
Where we talk about our history, our heritage, and our culture.
I'm Amari.
I'm Kharisma. Welcome back. Hi, Amari.
What's up?
I beat you to it.
You did. The month, quickly coming to an end.
It is.
What? February, shortest month of the year.
I know.
Seemed like 2 weeks. It's crazy.
It went too fast.
Yeah, it did. Today, though, before we end the month, I thought we were, a few episodes ago, we were talking about hair.
Yes.
And we started to really get into, it's like basically positive racial self-esteem, right? And today, we wanted to explore that a little bit further. What are your thoughts on the matter?
Wow, just jump right in.
Why not?
Okay. Well, on that episode, you mentioned the fact that, you'll say for your daughter, for instance, if you want to give her gifts, books would be great. And a lot of these books that are being tailored specifically to young Black girls reiterate how beautiful Black girls' hair is over and over again, and how different it is, and all those things, which in itself is great and positive. But the reasons that it's being done is because of so many outside sources saying that it's other. So you were saying you wonder if reinforcing that idea so much can possibly do the reverse and give young girls a complex. And I thought that was a fair point. It's such a because I know I'm not going to solve this by the end of this episode, but just where I am and where I was raised and how I was raised, I was always encouraged about all aspects of me. So it wasn't until I got older and started seeing some of those outside sources that I realized that wasn't being done across the board, if that makes sense.
Now here's the question then. How did you respond to that discovery when you were older?
A few ways. I mean, teenage years are rough regardless, right? So me being a teenager and being in predominantly white schools and private schools for a large chunk of my education, at times it was tough, and it wasn't because other kids were saying anything necessarily. It's kind of this desire to fit in, so to speak. I don't know if that's been your experience or not. But.
Well, I never grew up as a Black girl. So
well, you grew up as a Black boy, Amari.
No, I think, yes, except, so there were obviously some similarities right now, right? That period of high school, really trying to discover yourself and how you fit into the world. But the reason I was asking you that question is because if my theory is if there's a solid foundation established, then you would be able to navigate those waters a lot differently.
A lot easier.
Exactly, right.
Still difficult waters to navigate.
I mean, they would be right, but you would
easier.
be able to do it differently than someone who was just always sort of had this idea that they were never good enough. They didn't have any of that affirmation coming up.
Well, today we're going to explore this topic with our guest, Joyce Harden, but we have to take a break first.
Definitely.
So we'll be back with more 28 Days and Beyond right after this.
Welcome back to 28 Days and Beyond. We're joined now by Joyce Harden.
Welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
All is well.
Excellent, excellent. Before the break, we were talking about a plethora of things.
Yes, we were.
But the main crux was basically raising children with a positive racial self-esteem. Thoughts, ideas, opinions?
Plenty. I have plenty of thoughts, ideas. One, I will start because I do have a daughter that's relatively young, that's been raised in a predominantly white school almost all her life. So there has been a lot of issues concerning race and her being able to identify who she is outside of the school and inside the school.
Wow.
So it played a major part on her, just really trying to feel her, embrace everything that we have instilled in her, from her grandmother to myself, just our generation, our village, just making sure that she doesn't change who she is to fit in, and that she embraces her beauty from the inside out.
What are some of the challenges, or maybe some of the conversations you've had with your daughter in terms of her experiences at the school?
Some of this experience have been her hair majority of the time, but it's also been her skin, because I'm much lighter than her, and she's a combination of myself and her father. And it's there's been questions like, were we related? Questions based on just our tone, and it's like, no, you're just a combination of two parents. You're a product of two parents, so who knows what tone you're going to come out. But I can trust and believe that you're mine. I have the stripes to prove that you're mine or mine. So And hair has always been an
Look
issue.
at the eyes, Maury. Look at the eyes.
There's also been like issues of her hair. I did a lot of braiding with her hair, so there was a lot of patterns, and there was concerns from other students that wanted their hair the same way as hers, and they were Caucasian, so it was really relatively impossible, but they admired it from afar because it was something that they haven't seen before. And that would last for a long period of time. So as you know, our Caucasian brothers and sisters have to wash their hair 3 times, within a week, and we can, have our hair for like weeks to months without, shampooing it. So it was questions from that. It was kind of difficult.
Yeah. So what were some of the things that practically that you put into place to sort of combat those challenges?
Well, one, every day I told her that she was beautiful. That was something that we talked about every day. I prayed over her every day just to let her know that my voice and God's voice is what matters. But ultimately, you also have a voice too. So you want to be able to speak things to yourself. If I'm not there to protect you, to remind you, remind yourself that you're beautiful inside and out. And wherever you tread your feet, just remember who you are and always remain in that place, in that position. And when people throw you off a little bit and you fall off the square, you just jump right back on that train and ride it to the hills, dear. Because when you come home, Mommy's going to be right here.
So have you seen a shift since you and your daughter have started
I've
having
seen
those
a
dialogues?
dramatic shift.
Really?
So when she's younger, they're at an age where you can kind of mold them. They're sponges, so you can kind of pour into them, and they just take everything in, basically. It's just like, whatever you say, Mom, I'm going to be this. Oh, I can be that. I'm going to be this. And then when they get older and they're kind of influenced by other, resources and other professional celebrities, they start to influence them more than your voice. Their friends start to influence them a little bit more than your voice. And that became complicated. So I started having her friends over my house. I was like, okay, let me bring the influencers to my house so I can influence them since they're going to influence her. So that was really difficult because I had to remind her that you don't have to press your hair. You don't have to have these attires that these people are having. Know yourself. Wear what you like. Everybody's different. And when you don't want to be a copycat, you want to be an original all day long. When you become a copycat, then everybody looks the same.
Right.
And we can't identify our own identity. But we all look alike, think alike, speak alike.
One of the Kharisma was asked, she was trying to get off my personal business before, right? And one of my experiences was I went to school with high school and college with majority white people, and I know the impact, the positive and mostly negative impact that it had on me. And I asked myself, why would I want to put my children through that? So when we come back from the break, I'd like to ask you a little bit more about that.
Okay.
We come back with 28 Days and Beyond.
Awesome.
And we're back with 28 Days and Beyond, joined by Joyce Harden. So before the break, I was asking you about, me not wanting to replicate for my children the experiences that I had in majority white environments. Because a lot of times on this show and in conversations, we have people talk about the sort of racial trauma that they suffered as a result of being in these white spaces. And I'm curious as to why people do it,
Right.
Any thoughts on that?
Well, for me, I didn't grow up in a predominantly white school like my daughter. So I did the opposite. I grew up in predominantly black schools, pretty much fighting my life through school, I was lighter, so I was always a target. I was lighter, I had light eyes, so I was a target all the time.
Got to watch the ones with the light eyes.
Racism is real.
So it was the opposite. So I actually wanted the best for my child, to be able to focus on education, whereas it was more of a struggle for me to focus on obtaining education and having the most updated books, because there was so much other issues that we were dealing with in the school system that I said, education is non-negotiable. So I decided that I wanted her to have the best schools, not realizing that also came with a price.
Of course.
And the price was, she wanted the big houses that they had. Her friend's father was an engineer or a medical doctor. So they had these huge houses with pools and all these things that we did not have. But we had love and we had happiness. So I was trying more so not to have her fit into a crowd, but say, I want you to have a great education. And unfortunately, my school system did not have the best education possible. So, I opted to put her in this educational system that there was just a whole nother can of worms that I wasn't even ready or prepared to really handle or deal with. And some of those things was that she was very loud, very hyper. Well, we grew up in the South, so, you know, being loud and boisterous was not something that was like a disease or, you know, it was just like, this is how we are, this is our culture. But in her school, they frowned upon that. They wanted you to sit in class and pretty much be silent and be quiet and not really express yourself. So at home, I had to, you know, combat that by saying, no, you express yourself. So if I need to go up there and explain to them, y'all might need to bring some teachers in there to kind of be able to relate to our culture, so y'all won't think everything is HDD or everything is something, you know, because I was like, there's nothing wrong. This is just who she is.
So how do you feel now in terms of, you know, like you said, when you first, you know, put your daughter in the school that she's in, it was about offering her opportunities that you didn't have as far as your education. How do you feel now at this point, you know, as you're continuing to watch her grow and, you know, through the different stages of childhood and seeing seeing both sides of the equation?
I think that I was able to see a balance now that she's much older. There's been a balance. So the greatest thing is that she had a little bit of both, because eventually at some point I did take her out for a little while and put her in a public school, and she loved it to a certain extent, and then I had to put her back into a private school in high school because then it was kind of like she was bouncing around. But it brought a balance for her to be able to see both sides so that she can open her mind and make her own choices. So now that she's at an age where she's much smarter, much wiser, able to make her own choice without me having to convince her that this is the best choice for you, is where do you fit? Do you feel comfortable here? Because if you don't feel comfortable here, then we're going to place you where you feel comfortable, because this is where you're going to flourish and blossom and thrive the most. And if you feel like you're not comfortable and you don't have a voice here, then we might have to think about some other options.
You know, we've been talking about schools, but the reality is that these are, you know, we are bombarded with images that sort of, you know, value, you know, whiteness and white aesthetics everywhere we go, whether it be on TV or billboards or whatever have you. What's some advice that you would offer to parents who are trying to make sure that they want to instill a positive racial self-esteem in their black children?
I would suggest that they continue to instill that within their children, but unfortunately, we can't run from it. It's everywhere around us. So if you educate your children and make sure that you plant those seeds and remind them daily and provide them with material and literature to continue to increase the education. As a parent myself, I constantly have conversation. There's like a no technology zone in my house where we're actually having these conversations. There's a mother and daughter's day every week where there's no laundry, no cooking, nothing, just so we can focus on talking quality time within each other. And that could be anything, any topic, any situation. It could just be fun. It doesn't always have to be serious, but at least it allows us to engage, and not through text and not through buying clothing together or those kind of homeschool meetings, but something where we're actually relating to each other and she's sharing unadulterated. Like, just give it to me. What is really bothering you? What's really going on? How do you feel about certain things, certain topics? Share them with me. And not that I'm going to give you the right answer, because no answer is the right or wrong answer, but we're able to have a dialogue and conversation. And I think the conversation at the tables have kind of disappeared over time. So we're just bringing it back.
Well, we wish you could talk more about, because I'm really enjoying this conversation, but unfortunately we're out of time. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful being a part.
We'll be back with more 28 Days and Beyond right after this. And we're back with 28 Days and Beyond. Amari.
Hey.
Hi.
What's up?
So, thoughts?
My thoughts. This is one that something I spent a lot of time thinking about. And one of the things I appreciated about Joyce's comments, you know, she was like, I wanted the best for my child. And what I didn't realize is that there are other things that come along with it. And one of the things that I'm very passionate about is for us to come to an understanding that we don't have to pick either or. A black environment or a good education. This is what the importance, and this is some of the work that I've been doing, is developing educational spaces that are of high quality and are producing the types of students and people that we need in our communities. So part of the lesson that is subtly communicated is, if you want to be successful in life, you have to get away from black people. You have to go to where white people are. You have to, and that to me is unfortunate because it robs our communities of so many powerful minds.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I agree. I mean, a lot of her experience when she was sharing, like, I could relate to.
Yeah.
Grade school, I went to a predominantly black school, but my mom was president of the home and school, and she was constantly fighting to get better education. They were taking things out of the curriculum. Then I went to a predominantly white school, and it was I had a much better experience in terms of education, but again, it came with other elements that, so like to what you said, I do think we have to get to a point where we're not separating good quality education and blackness. Like, those things are not mutually exclusive. They can coexist, and they often do.
Right.
So until we get to that point, I just feel like we need to continue to instill in our youth racial pride, because black people are dope.
I mean, what else? You know, I'm happy that we got that conversation in this season, because it's kind of something that's been bubbling beneath the surface.
It
and
has.
You know, as we come to the close of the month, I can't believe
Stop
it.
reminding
I'm
me,
sorry, I
like,
won't
you're
do it
making
no
me
more.
sad.
But we are coming to the close of the episode. Don't be sad about that. We still got some more. This has been another episode of 28 Days and Beyond.
Where we talk about our history, our heritage, and our culture. We'll see you next time.
Peace.